Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll go heavy New Orleans Saints. We'll talk about the LSU Tigers. We may touch on the Tulane Green Wave if we have some time. And we've got some great guests for you tonight. Katherine Terrell of NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune joins us on the show, along with Evan Woodbery of NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Both of these individuals are beat writers on the Saints beat for the Picayune. Evan will be joining us in just a couple minutes. But Katherine, welcome to the show. Always great to have you on the program. And we always need to get started letting folks tell us a little bit about what's going on at the Picayune. I got all the great programming you guys got. If you would, elaborate for us, because we're not going to let Evan talk at all when he gets here.
He doesn't need to talk.
There you go.
Well, first of all, obviously, thanks for having me. And it's been a busy few weeks at the Saints facility. It never seems to stop. But like you said, Evan and myself cover the Saints every single day. So if you're ever on NOLA.com, even at 4:30 in the morning, which is actually a true story.
Yeah.
I actually reported something at 4:30 a.m. last week.
Wow.
Always something new.
I was turning over about 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah, well, I never stop, I guess.
And again, from the shows that you guys have, the little podcasts that you have on, are again the opportunity for folks to be able to reach you. And of course, folks can catch you on Twitter at.
Right, I'm at cat_Terrell, but if you follow me on Twitter, you're going to have to put up with some bad 90s music references, but I'll have some plenty of Saints news, too.
Beautiful. We're going to take a quick 1-minute break. Evan Woodbery is going to be with us, and we're going to kick off the show. Again, you're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Don't go anywhere.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
My name's Reggie. Just recently, my wife and I took in her sister's children. Now, we already had 4, so I went from becoming a family man to a man with a bigger family. Now, you can't eat love, so I don't know how I'm gonna feed them tonight. How was that, Rich?
I think I look more like Denzel.
That's cold, man.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking. Viking.
Red state, blue state, vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities,
Live.
our families,
United.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Cox Channel 14, Charter Channel 11 and 711, AT&T Channel 32 and 1032, Dish TV, DirecTV, and over-the-air broadcast on Channel 32.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching tonight. Katherine Terrell of NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune, along with Evan Woodbery of NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. As I mentioned, both these individuals on the Saints beat. Evan, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us. Tell us a little bit about what's going on over at the Times-Picayune.
Yeah, we've got tons of coverage in season, although it hasn't exactly started as we planned, an 0-3 season, but we've got tons of coverage, video stories from the locker room, and kind of trying to see where the season is going from here. Eventually, in the possibly very short future, we could segue from a lot of 2015 stories to a lot of 2016 and beyond stories.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, it just is a matter of whether that happens at the end of the year or a lot sooner than we expected.
Well, guys, let's get it started. Again, let's start off talking a little bit about the trade this week. Akeem Hicks, who has been a starter for this team, with the exception of maybe, again, it fallen under, I guess, hard times within the coaching staff over the last couple of weeks. His playing time was starting to get limited. He was traded to the New England Patriots. And I'm going to give this a shot, guys, okay? So let's try to get this again. Maybe someone else can pronounce it better. For Michael Humanawane.
I'm not even going to try.
Can you give us a shot?
Humanawanue.
Okay.
Humanawanue.
What he said. Okay, what he said. We're going to call him Huey from now on. But first of all, Katherine, your thoughts on this trade. A third straight tight end from a pretty deep tight end group, okay, when you talk about the New England Patriots, for a guy that you put so much time in developing, but also for the most part was a starter for you. A guy you moved from defensive tackle to defensive end. He lost weight in the offseason. Look, I'm going to tell you, as I was watching the tape over the last few weeks, he just wasn't playing well, okay? He just really wasn't playing well. I thought he was getting dominated at the point of attack. That had been kind of come a trend when you look at him going back to last season. But I thought, again, with the weight loss and the rejuvenation of the offseason, he might be a cog going forward. I still don't feel that they're very deep at that defensive line position right now. They still can't generate a pass rush. Your thoughts on the trade?
I was surprised. He obviously something happened there with him and the coaching staff. They benched him, even though Peyton kept saying that wasn't the case. It obviously was. They benched him against the Bucs, and then he comes back and he only plays a nickel. So undrafted rookie Bobby Richardson is playing ahead of him. I guess they felt that he was expendable because of that. No, he wasn't playing that well, but I still think that it's kind of weird that you would deal him away because if something happens to any of these guys, who are you going to play? They were short at tight end, but I thought that they needed a receiver or a pass rusher more. So it's kind of weird all around, but I guess they looked at the tape last week and they just thought, we can't get anything else out of this guy and we're done. But by all accounts, he was a good teammate. I think it was just him versus the coaching staff. I assume.
Evan, what can you add? What are your thoughts?
Well, like Katherine, I was surprised. Like Katherine, I thought it was really weird. Humanawanue may end up being a serviceable third-string tight end, but there are a lot of serviceable third-string tight ends on the wire that you could get right now, free agents that you could get right now. I don't think that was what the trade was about. I think the trade was about freeing kind of an opening for some of those young linemen to get more snaps that were currently being blocked by Akeem Hicks. What happened to Akeem Hicks between last year or 2013 and now? I don't know. I mean, you're right, he wasn't playing very well. But at the same time, you go back just to 5 weeks ago in camp, he looked in great shape. He was positive. He was enthusiastic about the start of the season. The coaches were as well. What happened? I don't know. I think, though, at the end of the day, they said they don't see him as a starter anymore. They don't even see him as a rotational player anymore, possibly. And so do you want to keep a discontented veteran on the roster who's not going to be happy with his role, as understandably he wouldn't be? Or do you want to get some young guys in there who are going to be thrilled with their role, even if it's just a limited one? So I think that's probably what it came down to, but that doesn't mean it wasn't stunning to me.
Guys, again, the big elephant in the room here is something that I've talked about on this show a lot, going back to last year. Talked about it on the radio show now, going back to maybe 2 years ago. An average of one player now since 2007, and it looks even worse, making an impact on this roster, this Saints roster. The 2012 class now joins the 2010 class with no members on the Saints roster. The 2014 class has one member. The 2011 class has two members. The 2013 class has three members on this roster right now. And that's how you build a team. I mean, especially when you've got a team that has veterans on it. Every year you've got to supplement that team with young players that are cheap, athletic, and again, the Saints just have not done that. They just haven't. They have missed and whiffed badly on the draft. The only respite here may be this draft this past year, where every single player at least made the roster or was on injured reserve.
Right. Well, you hope that, but you also can't supplement a bunch of cheap, young, undrafted rookies for established veterans. And not only that, just getting a veteran and free agent. A veteran free agent has been around and plugging him in for a year before he's got to be let go because he's 35. That doesn't help either. There's no way to establish team chemistry that way. So there's just problems all around. And like you said, it starts with the draft. it is so important now to hit on your draft because if you have a good quarterback, it takes up so much of your cap space, as everybody knows looking at the Saints. And if you can't hit on your draft class, then you're resorting to these one-year tactics with Kevin Williams or Jonathan Goodwin, and they might play okay for a year, but then they've got to go, and you're right back to square one. So there's so many problems here, and it's not an issue I see going away anytime soon unless this class is just great.
Right, and look, I'll add this before I come to you, Evan. 20% dead money on this cap right now, and next year again, already looking at $12 million with Gillette. You know that more than likely you're gonna have Colston and also Jari Evans in the mix there. That they're going to be gone. That's dead money there.
Maybe.
And Street as well. And then you got to figure out what you're going to do with a $30 million man. Whether you're going to extend him, try to work out a deal where you can lower that cap number. This is just a recipe for what we're seeing right now, a team that's kind of floundering.
Yeah, and that honestly that goes back to the draft a lot too, because with drafted players you have cost certainty for their when they sign a 4-year contract after being drafted, you have cost certainty throughout those entire 4 years. It's pretty much there's no negotiation. It's already locked in what they're going to be paid. So that helps you build for cap purposes as well. I thought there was such a great contrast with the Green Bay Packers and with the number of players, I forget how many it is, but an incredible number have never played for another team, and they came up through the draft in the Packers system. Now there's more than one way to build a team. That you don't have to do it that way, but the Saints are clearly, not only have they drafted poorly, or at least not developed their drafted players, but also they haven't had many draft picks. So when you miss, they're a lot more costly than teams like the Patriots or Seahawks that stockpile those draft picks. The Saints have done the opposite over the last 5 years, and their batting average may be the same as other teams, but their misses hurt a lot more because there are fewer draft picks.
They've augmented it by, again, signing undrafted free agents, and in some cases those players have come in and contributed. But again, the lifeblood of any franchise is the draft. You mentioned something, Evan. I want to come to you first on this one. Developing players, okay? I've talked about it on the radio show. We've talked about it on this show. Bill Johnson, Joe Vitt, Greg McMahon. They've been with Sean Payton since 2006. They are untouchable. I'm amused that, again, they got the job for life, the brother-in-law job at this point. At some point, you got to take a hard look at these guys and say, who have they developed? Okay, who has come in as a rookie and has gone on to All-Pro or Pro Bowl status consistently? When you look at both the linebacker and of course the defensive line positions, and then of course, honestly, for the most part, Greg McMahon's special teams have not been special. When you want to talk about player development, this was something that everybody talked about early in the Payton era. These guys were developing players. All of a sudden now, it doesn't seem like we're seeing that development.
Yeah, well, I think you look at, there's a contrast between, say, the 2006 class where you got not only some good high-level picks, but also the back of the draft players that went on to be extremely productive throughout the course of their career. And we focus probably the most on those first and second rounders, but it's where you get the most value, or the back end of the draft. Whether it's turning a sixth rounder into a role player or turning them into a long contributor. And I think that hurts now and will hurt in the years to come. When you look at some of the guys, like the Nick Tunes that never panned out, or the Ronald Powells, or the guys that were mid-round type material that never really developed either into role players or significant contributors. Because, to use a good example for the Saints, you look at, say, a Teron Armstead, who was a mid-round guy. Yes. He's kind of the picture perfect of what you want to happen for a player to develop in your draft. And, the more those you hit on, the better you're going to be.
Kevin, you covered this team for a couple seasons. You're in the locker room, you see these guys. Again, nobody wants to throw coaches under the bus, but you got to call it like you see it. Again, right. They're not developing players. Guys are coming in here, they're not getting better.
Well, I can tell you one good example, I guess, of player mismanagement. A source once told me that a lot of players felt that Tyron Walker was one of their best young defensive linemen, and they felt he should be playing over Akeem Hicks. And Bill Johnson loved Akeem Hicks and continued to play him. And that was just apparently from the player's perspective, but Akeem Hicks is no longer here a year later. So where they let Tyron Walker go, but where did Akeem Hicks go from there? He was playing, but was it deserved playing time? And why did he not develop from where he was to where he is now? So that's just one thing. And then another, you look at Jimmy Graham, and they traded Jimmy Graham to help the offense and get Max Unger, but suddenly they don't have a tight end, and now they have to trade a defensive player to get a tight end.
Right.
it's a lot of mismanagement. And when you talk about the coaches, just like you said, they're never going anywhere. I get these questions all the time. Well, is Joe Vitt going to be fired? Is something going to happen to Joe Vitt? No, he won't be. It'll be his decision unless Peyton leaves. And Bill Johnson might retire at some point. I wouldn't be surprised. But otherwise, they're here to stay.
No, they got jobs for life. By the way, Tyrone Walker starting for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, he's playing well in Detroit, and it was a cap issue. I guess they could have made that decision to keep him, but they felt at the time they didn't want to tender him. And he, I think, signed with Detroit for $1.8 million.
Yeah.
And now you wonder, could Tyrone Walker have been now that Keem Hicks is gone, could Tyrone Walker have stepped into that role?
Yeah.
But, it's just, you don't know.
And again, when you look at this right now, it's every Saints fan's worst nightmare that Akeem Hicks now goes to the New England Patriots and he flourishes. Some are saying maybe he was out of position. He had played on the inside for most of his career at defensive tackle, or nose tackle, and you move him out to defensive end in their lineup, and maybe that just didn't fit him. But I mean, that's what I'm hearing from the fans. Watch him go to New England and all of a sudden now blow up.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see what happens. And I think honestly that would probably be an indictment of the Saints if they find a role in which he thrives in New England. If that does happen, the Patriots are obviously they're well respected for a reason. So we'll see what they have in store for them.
It wasn't so long ago, guys, that teams were looking for Saints cast-offs. Okay. Now the Saints are looking for other teams' cast-offs to be able to fill out this roster. And, you're going with a 47% turnover in the roster. You got guys that are 1 year out of college or coming as rookies. They haven't been in an NFL weight room yet. In some cases, again, it's physically they can't stand up to maybe the guy across from them. You got guys that are on practice squads that are now big parts of this team. And, of course, the guy from Canada is not playing too bad right now in Devin Breaux. Before we go to the phone lines, just talk a little bit about Drew Brees. Your thoughts on Brees and whether you feel like he's going to play this week and just overall what you think he will be, because we saw last year, now that we know about, again, that he had a rotator cuff injury last year as well as the oblique injury, his inability to be accurate going downfield. Teams kind of started playing him that way as well, didn't believe that he could beat him with the long ball. You add that with the lack of playmakers on the offensive side, and especially the wide receiver position. Talk about Drew Brees and how effective he may be against the Dallas Cowboys if he goes.
I think Drew Brees has made a significant improvement from last week to this week. I do believe he's going to play. As to how effective he's going to be, I think that he will be able to make a lot of these throws. And honestly, they're relying on a short passing game right now anyway. Even when he was healthy in week 1, it's been short passes and screen passes, which I don't think is going to be effective long term. Obviously, it has not been since they haven't won. But if you want to get Drew Brees in there to do that, I think he'll be able to do that just fine. Will he be throwing 60 yards downfield? Probably not, but they haven't really asked him to do that anyway. But I don't know. The team has so many holes. I don't know really how much of a difference Drew Brees is going to make, which is weird to say, and that's not an indictment on him. It's just that every week it's the offense might play well and the defense doesn't. The defense plays well, the offense doesn't. So I really don't know how big of a difference he'll make.
Evan?
I'm with Katherine, and I think he'll play also. I've learned to be very cautious about Drew Brees' optimism because he's always optimistic and
just positive person.
And as a positive person, yeah. But I think that was probably why it was so jarring after the game, and even in the press conference a few days later, that he was very downcast by his standards. So yeah, I think the fact that that he is optimistic and seems a lot different this week than last week is giving me confidence that he's going to play. But like Katherine said as well, I think the downfield passing game will be really interesting to watch. See if they can expand that out beyond the 10 yards or so where they've been successful so far this year. That's pretty critical.
Let's stay with injuries for a moment. Looks like the Warrior Keenan Lewis will be back this week. There's talk that Ellerby and Bird may play. Obviously Spiller is back, even though he had a limited role once again last week. Katherine, your thoughts on some of the walking wounded coming back and playing for this team?
Keenan Lewis said he was going to be back a few days ago, and you got to take him at face value. If he says it, I believe him. I think that will make a big difference because I think with Lewis back, they'll be able to figure out another role for Browner that might help him. I don't think the coaches helped Browner out very much by putting him in the positions they did, and a lot of people were saying it's all his fault. I think that the coaches could have figured something out. They really kind of exposed him. So they'll have to figure out that rotation. I think Bro will stay on the field. Maybe they'll switch him out. I don't know. With Bird, I've learned just not to make any predictions. I don't know. It looks like he could play, but I really don't know, and I don't know how effective he'll be. It's been a year since he played, so who knows?
Ellerby?
Same thing. I get the sense that he will play, but I got that sense last week too that it was possible. I'm not sure yet. I think if he does play, he could replace Hawthorne. Maybe not this week, but I would think that would be their intention.
Right.
Yeah, for Ellerby, I think he probably does play Hawthorne, maybe Humber in some nickel packages to start out, or maybe they just start him out with 10 or 12 snaps in his first game just to kind of test the toe, see how he's doing, and maybe just play him a little bit in nickel packages here or there. But I think he's back. I think Keenan Lewis is back, and like Katherine, I'm not even going to guess on Jairus Bird.
We'll be wrong.
Yeah.
You know, and that's another one. Will they ease him back, or will they throw him right in?
Well, I mean, I almost think you got to ease him back, right? As Katherine said, it's been a year since he's had any kind of contact.
Be careful.
His body's not ready for football at this point. And you know, again, he may be in shape, but he's not in football shape at this point. When you look at where they are right now, can these guys coming back from injury, can they make a huge difference on this team, in your opinion?
I think they can make an upgrade. I think, you know, they got Ellerby for a reason. They had a plan that they envisioned for Ellerby. Now, we never really got to see it because he was injured in the first preseason game, so a lot of how they want to use him is still kind of a mystery to a certain extent. But I think they really did think that he had certain skill sets that would elevate the defense, and that's why they made the move. Keenan Lewis, I think with the consistency that Delvin Breaux has shown, really to the point that already teams are trying to stay away from him.
Yes.
You put him there with Keenan Lewis, I think that's a good thing. And like Katherine said, maybe find a more specialized role until Brandon Browner can get more confidence in this defense. But no, I think it's an upgrade. And realistically, you know, the free safety has been probably fine over the first 3 games, but they haven't made any plays. They haven't been difference makers at that position. In theory, the reason they went out and got Jairus Bird is to be a difference maker, a playmaker. You know, if just one interception, one turnover can change a game, if he can inject just a little bit of that, it would be huge.
Yeah. Katherine, your thoughts? How much of a difference they can make?
Really just what Evan said. I think the biggest difference maker will be Lewis. I think that it obviously hurt not to have him, but not as much as you'd think because the young guys stepped up so well. But at the same time, I mean, they're 0-3. It can't get worse.
Right.
These guys.
Well, watch that.
I mean, can it? I don't know. Maybe it can, but I would have to think these guys would help.
Well, guys, you mentioned, Katherine, about not doing any favors for Brandon Brown. I agree with you. He's a bump and run corner that's having a tough time running right now. And you put him in a zone defense, okay? And I agree with you, Evan. I keyed in on Devin Breaux as I went back and looked at the tape. He is smothering receivers. He's right there. He's playing well in run support as well. They've got to do something to allow Browner to be effective. And to me, the best 2 corners on this team right now are Lewis and Breaux. And then if you ask me who the third best is, I got to say it's got to be Swann. You know, again, I don't know how the coaching staff feels about that, but that's the eye test.
I think Swann has played really well, and people are so down with the Saints right now. Whenever I say things like this or that Breaux played well, they're like, I don't know, they just kind of want to knock it down because you can't say positive things when the team's 0-3, but I think it is positive. I told somebody, I said, well, would you rather have Corey White and Patrick Robinson?
No.
Corey White, my friend who covers Dallas said Corey White has only played special teams, so he hasn't been doing much. And I don't know what Patrick Robinson is doing. I think he's with the Chargers, but I really think that has been a bright spot considering where they were and how much they've struggled to find corners since Jabari Greer went down.
It didn't cost you a draft pick. I mean, again, not that you would have picked him, but it didn't cost you a draft pick.
Oh, I love Damian Swann. I think he's been phenomenal, not just in the passing game, but probably even especially in the running game, making some really, really impressive open field tackles. And if you'll notice in some of the nickel and dime sets, they pretty much have him as a second safety sometimes so they can move Kenny Vaccaro up closer to the box or even have Kenny Vaccaro almost like a cornerback, guarding a receiver. So they like his versatility, and I think that's the way he'll continue to get back on the field even as players come back from injuries. You know, he's shown that he can be versatile enough to play in a lot of different packages.
866-3200 is the phone number. To the phone lines we go. Thanks for being patient, audience. Greg is in Houma. Greg, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey,
Hey,
my
Greg.
question is the season doesn't look too bright, and I think we're going to have kind of a losing season. So my question is since this is uncharted territory, what is the strategy for a losing season? I mean, do you just give up when you're 0-8 or 0-7 and start playing other people, or what is the strategy for a losing season?
Thank you for the phone call. Is uncharted territories for this regime,
right.
honestly.
Well, I mean, I guess there's a losing season in which you're still sort of in it until the last few weeks of the season, and there's a losing season where, it's just it's over. Everybody knows it's over.
Throw the dirt on it.
Yeah, and so if that happens, that will be interesting to see. I mean, you've got some young guys you can test out, you can play, but to me the issue is the future of this franchise, or any franchise really in the NFL, revolves around the quarterback. And if this is going to be a disaster, end of the world type season, then that raises questions about the future of who your quarterback is going to be in 2016 and beyond. So that's why I think it's tough to even think beyond this year in that context, because if this is the end of the line for the Breeze era, and I'm not saying it is, but if this is like a disaster type season where that comes into play, then I don't know how much you can build for next year when you're not 100% sure who that quarterback is going to be. Maybe a test run for Garrett Grayson. I mean, I don't know. Those are the questions that will crop up if these losses keep piling up, though.
Well, I don't know that it is a disaster type season yet. It could be. It certainly could be, but at the same time, in my mind, they're an average team. They're not great, obviously, and they're not terrible. So they're capable of winning a lot of the games on the schedule. So I could see them climbing out of the hole and kind of ending up 7-9, 8-8, and then that's probably where you don't want to be, because then you get an average draft pick and you have all these decisions to make, and you're not really being helped because you're not figuring out what's going on. So really, for the best thing for the Saints is either climb out and have a great season, or just tank it. There's no funny saying this year like "suck for luck," so I don't know who they would try to find, but it'll be interesting to see where the season goes, and I think a lot will hinge on this week, honestly.
Before we go back to the phone lines, you brought him up, Drew Brees. Again, he renegotiates his deal this week, opens up about $2.6 million salary cap room, taking his $5.2 million base, converting that to a signing bonus. That's amortized over the life of the deal. Only one more year left on that deal. $2.6 million this year, $2.6 million next year. But his cap number next year goes up from $27 to $30 million. The question for a lot of people is, okay, he's going to be the highest paid player in the NFL next year as far as his cap number goes. Do you renegotiate a deal to try to get that cap number down and maybe add a couple seasons to the back end? Do you, at that point, maybe try to make a deal for him? Again, that cap number, that money comes due. I mean, it's not like you're going to have an opportunity to somehow rid yourself of the albatross that is that huge cap number. Evan, what do you think is the plan here going forward?
Well, I think that's a decision that's going to have to be made, and it'll probably depend on what happens for the rest of the season. But I think they have to do either or. I don't think standing pat is an option with just that 1 year on it, because it's going to make it virtually impossible to make any kind of roster restructuring around that huge cap number. I think if you are going to keep Drew Brees, I think you have to make an extension so that you can have enough flexibility in the cap to add some pieces to be competitive next year. I don't think you can go with just a 1 year deal left with Drew Brees. The other option is trading him and freeing up that cap space, number one, but also picking up whatever you can get. And what you can get probably is highly dependent on how the rest of the year goes, how his health is. Obviously, a fully healthy Drew Brees, I think, would be an incredible demand. Drew Brees with arm problems or questions about how his shoulder is going to hold up, that would be another issue. But all these questions, that's why the rest of the year, even if they lose or they continue to lose, these questions are still going to be very intriguing for the rest of the year, because I think the future 2016 kind of hinges what's going to happen in 2015.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Does he have the highest cap number? I thought Sue had a crazy high cap number.
I read that this week, that he was going to have the highest cap number next year at $30 million.
It would be close.
Yeah,
it'd probably be him or
it's
Sue.
Going to be right. Yeah, but no matter what, it's $30 million.
It's bad. Yeah. He will not play at that number next year. He will not. They will have to do something. Right. So really, the only thing that you do is he plays well enough that you extend him, or they have to cut ties with him. If you restructure it again, you just make it even. I guess if you restructured and added a year or something, it'll just make it even worse. You have to somehow negotiate an extension with a lower cap number, or you've got to let him go. And if they're going to let go with if they're going to let go of Jari and Colston and Streif, and I would think Ben Watson could be another casualty, then I think there would be a changing of the guard, and they might be okay with that.
Right. Do you see him playing for under $20 million a year?
No. I mean, well, you know, assuming he's fully healthy and goes back to a somewhat normal Drew Brees for the rest of this year, no, absolutely not. Because you look at every marquee elite quarterback that's come on the free agent market or quasi-free agent market is getting just astronomical money. Even bad quarterbacks are getting great money. So, no, I don't think he will be inclined to give a pay cut, and I don't think he will have to accept one. I think, you know, if he became a free agent, there'd be plenty of suitors.
He said before that he wouldn't take a pay cut, and I don't know why he would. If you could play at a high level, he could tell the Saints he won't take one and cut me, and another team would fall over themselves trying to get him. It doesn't matter if he'll be 37. You saw the Peyton Manning sweepstakes, and the same thing with Brett Favre, and he's still an elite quarterback, no matter what you think about his arm or anything. So he would have the leverage there in a way that he wouldn't have to take a pay cut, and he's not going to.
Yes. Back to the phone lines we go, 866-3200. Brian is in Metairie. Brian, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Brian.
Hi, folks. How y'all doing tonight?
Thanks for holding.
How you doing tonight?
Doing great.
Good.
Doing great.
Okay, I'm trying to be as quick as I can because I'm flabbergasted right now. This is a bad team. This has been a bad team for several years. They're not average. They're bad. They can't tackle. They can't rush the quarterback. They gave away 50% of their offense. And it's not all the players, because I think since the suspension, Sean Payton has not been the same. He's as vanilla as vanilla can be. He's going to run the ball if there's 50 men on the block. You know, but now he can't throw it because he's traded everybody away. And they understand why they're not winning. It doesn't take a genius. Their defense is terrible. And I don't understand how you live in offensive line university. You have guys at LSU that could fit right in. We had one of them we blew on draft day. We could have done what Dallas did. We were in the backyard. What were they doing? Having hamburgers? We could have got this kid for 1 year cheap. And there's one of your linemen to protect Drew, and Drew might not be hurt. And you know what? Drew's going to be an excuse this year, no matter how the season goes, good or bad. If it's bad, well, Drew was hurt. All we got now is they have an excuse. And, you know, it just fires me up when people say we're average. We're not average. We're not going to be average. We can't tackle. We can't do nothing. So I'll listen to y'all's response.
Brian, thank you for the phone call. You guys believe that it's an average team?
Well, I mean, they couldn't tackle last year either, and they still. I just see them as a 6-10, 7-9, 8-8
Which
team.
is an average team in the NFL.
That's
maybe a little below average.
When I think of horrible teams, I think of what have the Jags. Well, I guess the Jags have won a game. Oh, that is bad.
I think Browns have won. Browns have won a game.
Saints don't look real good right now.
Yeah, I guess Assming in 2 weeks that might be downgraded to a very bad team. I don't know.
Look, I feel the caller's pain, and again, it's been talked about on both of my shows. You know, the individuals that are responsible for this, they are responsible for the Lombardi Trophy, but they're also responsible for the downfall of this franchise, and it is Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis, with the emphasis on Sean Payton. I mean, Mickey Loomis is the cap guy. At the end of the day, Sean Payton is making the football decisions, and I agree with the call, and I've said it on my radio show and this show as well. I don't think Sean Payton has been as focused since the Bounty Gate situation. I think he's more focused now, but I think he lost focus, and I think it's one of the reasons why you saw the downturn. I mentioned it last week on this show. You can't walk the red carpet at night and kiss the Lombardi in February. Coaches are sleeping at the facility in 31 other cities. So you got to be doing the same. Evan?
Well, I mean, I think just going back to the question of what this team is, and I don't know, in my just couple of years of covering the NFL, to me the biggest difference versus college is that in the NFL there's 3 or 4 really, really good teams and 3 or 4 really, really bad teams, and that everybody else is just somewhere in the middle. And I do agree that it's been a while since the Saints were one of those really, really good teams. And I think one thing that we've probably learned over the last couple of years is that a good quarterback can mask a lot of the problems that are elsewhere. Whereas, you know, in the Super Bowl year, the Saints had a great quarterback, but they also had a great supporting cast for that great quarterback. And I think even in the years subsequent, they may have had a great quarterback, but the supporting cast has fallen off, and we maybe didn't realize it until here we are.
Right. Anything you can add before we go to the callers?
Really just kind of what he said. It's hard to figure out who is responsible exactly for why the Saints are so bad. I think that there's a lot of people responsible. And you said it starts with Sean Payton, but I don't think it's just Sean Payton. I think that with the coaches, there are probably too many hands in the pot with a lot of them. Probably Rob Ryan's defense being number one. And not only that, you have Dennis Allen lurking behind him. As soon as he makes a mistake big enough for them to fire him, it'll be Dennis Allen probably as the defensive coordinator. And that's not a good environment to work in. And there's a lot of issues there. If they can win this week, well, I guess we'll see where they go from there. But if they lose, I think it could all just totally fall apart if it hasn't already.
It's one of the mind-boggling things of the offseason. If you didn't want Rob Ryan around, why didn't you just fire him? I mean, instead of having – look, no one is comfortable when you have someone looking over your shoulder ready to take your job. I don't care in what profession you're in. So at the end of the day, you weren't happy with Ryan. You didn't like the way things were going. Instead of bringing in Dennis Allen and have him lurking in the background, you should have just made the move.
Right, and I'm not the only person that's noticed this, but we've kind of talked about it in the media, and I think it's been written about, is that really every time that we've talked to Rob, going back to August or July, he's referenced Sean Payton's blueprint for this defense, that Sean Payton laid out a blueprint for the defense during the offseason, and that he's working very hard to implement the blueprint. And at first I thought that was just, coach talk, and that was his way of kind of praising Sean Payton. But the more he says it every single time we talk to him, the more I think it's just his way of kind of saying
this ain't mine.
That the keys have been taken away from me as far as the defense. And I absolutely believe that. And I'm sure it's a challenging coaching environment, not only because of Dennis Allen, but because of Joe Vitz, the assistant head coach, who's also coaching linebackers, who's also probably the closest on staff to Sean Payton. So, I mean,
his eyes and ears.
There are some challenges in that defensive meeting room there.
Katherine?
Exactly what he said. You have Dennis Allen lurking, and then you have Joe Vitt, who is the linebackers coach, but he's the assistant head coach. So I don't know how much Rob is able to challenge him.
You'd like to see that chain of command there, that organizational flow chart.
I think it would be very confusing. I don't know if anyone knows who's in charge except for Sean Payton. So it's funny, we keep referencing like defense. It's obvious on the offense. It's Sean Payton. But on defense, who actually is in charge? I don't actually know. And I'm going to guess that a lot of the players probably don't know either.
That could be the root of a lot of the problems we're seeing right now. Chris is uptown. Chris, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hello, how y'all doing?
Hey, Chris.
I think the Saints need a whole new coaching staff.
Chris, thank you for the phone call. You may get your wish before it's all said and done, although I truly believe that Sean Payton will leave when Sean Payton is ready to leave. I don't think that there's anyone in that building that has the power or the guts to turn around and say, hey, Sean, it's the end of the line for you.
Right. If Sean Payton leaves after this year, he will be leaving voluntarily, and he will be going to another good coaching job very quickly. And there may be options. And that may be how this kind of regime or this era ends, of the Breeze and Payton coming in together and leaving together. But if he does leave, I don't think he's going to be fired. I think he will be leaving voluntarily and having another job lined up very quickly.
I don't see any of this ending the way the fans would like it to. It's not going to be pretty, but I think it'll end the way Sean wants it to. If, like Evan said, he will leave when he wants to leave. And I think the same thing with Loomis. I just don't think there's anybody there that's going to fire them or hold them accountable. I think that's just not really how things are run these days. So I think if Payton wants to leave, he'll leave. But I wouldn't think that he would be fired.
Well, and I'll take you back in time to when Tom Benson first bought this team, leading up to, again, when the keys were handed over to Sean Payton. There is no way on God's green earth that Tom Benson would have allowed $31 million in dead money, okay, where he was paying players that ultimately were not on this team. The old Tom Benson, no way in the world that happens, and there would be people that would be held accountable for that, and there would be firings within the organization. So that tells you everything you need to know right now. I mean, when you're looking at 20% of the salary cap that's not even on this team, and then you're looking at $12 million before you even kick off a ball next year already in dead money, that again are bad decisions by the front office, that would not have stood up with the old Tom Benson.
Right, and you wonder, did Jimmy Graham need to go so badly that there wasn't a center that you could have drafted? Unger is a great player, and I think he's been a great addition, but you're going to pay Jimmy Graham $9 million not to play for you, and they could have used him too. And they probably could have found a center in another way. It's funny because they'd never really valued centers before. It was actually a criticism of them that for so long they had just had a center there.
They plugged them in.
Right, with Goodwin, which unfortunately for Goodwin, he great guy and great player, and he'd been so durable, and it just fell apart. Right. But it's the same thing. It's like you said, it's plugging in a player, and it doesn't work. So yeah, there's a lot of really bad decisions that have been made over the last year, 2, 3 years, and it's all kind of coming together now, and what you're seeing is a winless team.
Which we kind of knew, Evan, because again, they looked at this team as they were just maybe 1 or 2 players away from another championship, and they were going to do everything they can to max out that credit card to get one more title, and then they'll just let the balls fall where they fall at that point.
Yeah, and that strategy works to a point. I mean, if you are looking at it from the perspective of we've got a team that's just on the cusp, that's so close, and we've got a great elite Hall of Fame quarterback that's just, we don't know how many years, but we've got him for a few more years, and so let's put that credit card down and let's do everything we can to win and win now. I mean, that if you're right, that works.
Oh,
if you're on the money, then yeah, that's a great idea.
Yes.
But when it doesn't work, you've got a problem that year, and you've also got a problem for the year after, and the year after, and possibly the year after.
Yeah, you're paying for it now, and you will be for the next few seasons. To Mid-City and Jason. Jason, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Jason.
Hey,
welcome to the show.
Hey, the caller before kind of took some of my steam, so I'm going to kind of change. I'm going to stay off the LSU thing because that's what I was going to talk about, them not drafting any of the LSU players. But, I want to tell you guys something. It's 4 players that we have not replaced since the days of since our winning days. We haven't replaced Everett Henderson. We have not replaced Jonathan Vilma. We have not replaced Will Smith, and we have not replaced Darren Sharp. I hate to bring his name up right now, but those are 4 players, 4 positions we have not replaced or fixed. In the process of trying to fix or trying to adjust the style that we play, we fell into the Saints don't have any defense. The Saints don't have this. We tried to fix that. But in the process of trying to fix that, we did not fix what made us that fast break team. We had a middle linebacker that was extremely fast. We had a safety that was extremely fast. We had a rush in who could get to the quarterback and make plays, and we had a speed demon at wideout. These things that I feel are some of the breakdowns. And the compound matters, it seems like our staff, when I say our staff, our guys who do our drafting and stuff, seem like they stay away from the players from the southern states or the southern colleges like the SEC. Yes. The SEC is littered all over the league right now, and we go way across the country to get a guy, which that doesn't mean the guys can't play, but I'm talking about in terms of the region and the climate and playing in this environment. And does that have something to do with injuries? I don't know. But, all that you have to take into consideration. We signed C.J. Spiller. He's healthy. What are we waiting for? You know what I mean? Something is broken. I don't know what it is. I'm not the expert. But I'm going to hang up, and I'm going to listen to you folks.
Thank you so much for the phone call. That was a lot. But guys, can you look? I think they've tried to replace those players. You look. They went out and got Jarvis Bird to try to replace Sharper. Immediately they brought in Lofton to try to replace Vilma. Now they've got Anthony. The deep threat, they brought in Meacham to try to augment that loss of Henderson. That was kind of a plug-in guy. Joe Morgan is back, but he's been again just non-existent. So I think they've tried. I think the biggest problem is what we go back to, the draft, the lifeblood of this of any organization. They're not adding young, athletic, cheap players.
Right, and they're not making great decisions with the draft either. I know the Andrus Peat thing has been beat to death, and I have no problem with Peat himself. I think that one day he might be a great player, but when you look at the Saints, they really needed a defensive player there. And I know a lot of them were already off the board, and maybe they panicked a little bit, but you probably could have traded up I mean, it's semantics, but I think that obviously, like you said, it goes back to the draft. They have one player from their 2014 draft class. One. I saw a tweet the other day about something. I think the Bears or some other team had just released their first player from their draft class last year, and I'm thinking, well, the Saints only have one, and that's incredible. How does that happen?
Yes.
It's like I said, there's mistakes all around. That's why there's no one person to blame for why the Saints are not winning. It's an issue in every part of the team, essentially.
Right. And Evan, they tried to replace Will Smith, Junior Collette, Cam Jordan. They paid them both handsomely. They just haven't panned out for the most part. They're not Will Smith.
Probably shouldn't have paid Junior Collette.
Yes, agreed. But they paid him twice, which was even more mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, I think even as recently as from the 2013 to 2014 season, you saw the release of veterans, and that happens with every team during the off season. But there was so many at one time, and I think it absolutely hurt them, probably more than they could have anticipated at the time. Because those players for the most part did not go on to play elsewhere. Most of them, they were at the end of the line in their career. But I think to remove all that institutional knowledge and all those players who were very comfortable and familiar with their role and what they were assigned to do, and to remove them all at once was difficult. And I think they talked a lot about learning those lessons, and maybe they did. But that's going to be an issue that's going to crop up again this offseason, because there's going to be a lot of those decisions to be made.
I think they have, in a sense. They bring in a Brandon Browner, okay? They bring in a Kevin Williams, both guys who, again, have won Super Bowls, veteran guys, leaders. They don't release Marcus Colston. They don't release Jari Evans. You can't say anything about Zach Strief. He played very, very well last year. But again, institutional knowledge in that, especially in the wide receiver position with Colston in that meeting room. So I think they've learned that lesson. The problem is, again, one of the more mind-boggling trades in the offseason was Kenny Stills, okay? You trade Kenny Stills, you get the draft choice, and you get Ellerby back, but yet you don't replace Kenny Stills. You don't put another playmaker out there at the wide receiver position. I understand moving Stills if you got to move Stills, but I don't understand not, again, making sure you had someone on that roster that was going to take Kenny Stills' place.
I definitely agree with that, and that's probably why when I did one of my million mock drafts in the offseason, I kept saying they're going to get a wide receiver. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a no-brainer. Obviously, I was very wrong, but I thought they'd draft a wide receiver in the first round. So it's not just Stills. They didn't replace Graham. So who did they think on the roster was going to be that red zone threat? Colston is what he is. He's getting older. He's not what he used to be, and that's no secret. They don't have a true red zone threat anymore, and I don't think that it was an issue where Graham had to go. And I'm not just focusing on Graham. Stills, I think there were things that made them want to send Stills away, and that's fine.
That's fine.
But like you said, you got to replace him. Yeah. Where was their offense going to come from? Maybe their faith in Jones and Coleman was just so high they felt that they could be replaced, and maybe they were misguided on that.
That's a huge miss, though. I mean, when you're planning on two guys that are undrafted free agents who had, again, weren't perfect players to begin with. Coleman had to learn how to catch the football, which is kind of essential for a wide receiver. You look at Jones. Jones is not even really on the active roster right now. So, Evan, what can you add there?
Well, I think it's kind of how you value players, and sometimes it's been a little bit confusing at times because, by the money they invested in Jimmy Graham and by the role he played in the offense, it would seem to indicate that's a position they value greatly. But then they go into this season, they don't make any additional moves. They go onto the roster starting the first 3 weeks with only 2 tight ends on the roster at all. It's I don't know. It strikes you as odd about how they value certain players. Certainly, they thought Jimmy Graham was replaceable within the context of the offense. They definitely saw Kenny Stills as a replacement level player that they could easily fill the gap for. Time will tell how right they are on both counts. I think certainly the loss of Jimmy Graham has been most notable so far.
We're going to try to knock out each and every one of these phone calls. Let's go to Deborah in Gentilly. Deborah, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yes, hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for calling.
The question that I have is, do you think the Saints should run the ball Sunday against the Cowgirls? Because I watched the game with the Falcons, and that's what they did. And should they use Kylie Robinson? Should he get more touches?
Thank you, Deborah. I certainly believe Kyrie Robinson should get more touches. What's the recipe for success against the Cowboys? Do you have it?
I don't, but try to get C.J. Spiller involved more. Mark Ingram's a guy that works best when he has a lot of touches, but at the same time, you gotta put Kyrie Robinson in a little bit more as a change of pace back. I think when he hasn't been in, he's played really well. So you got to find a better balance. I don't know what that balance is, but you got to find a better balance between those three guys.
Yeah, I don't have the answer either. I just remember last year everyone was saying that Mark Ingram needs more touches, needs to play more, wasn't playing enough. And this year I'm much more likely to hear the opposite, even though Mark Ingram really hasn't done anything wrong. But the backfield is crowded. They need to find more touches for C.J. Spiller, and that in that context, it may be difficult to get more for Kyrie Robinson, even though I think he's played phenomenally.
I think he's been the best backup. No knock against Ingram at this point. I just think he's been a more explosive back when he's on the field. To Harvey and Kerry. Kerry, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Kerry. Let's put Kerry on hold. Okay, we got him. We'll bring him back then, if you would, Will. Kerry, you with us?
Yes, I'm right with y'all.
Okay, Kerry, go ahead.
Hey, how you doing? You know what? To really throw a little bit of my thunder, I was going to ask the same why Kyrie Robinson out on the field a little bit more, because I noticed against Tampa Bay when he gave him a jolt of, energy, then they took him out the game. I mean, we didn't even see him for the last drive. And, we've seen less of a good running back, and I don't understand it. What y'all think about that?
Well, it reminds me of the Chris Ivory situation. It really does. When you go back in a little bit in recent history, the way they're utilizing Kyrie Robinson, and they kind of did the same with him.
I really don't have an answer for it, though. And if you try to get an answer about Sean Payton, about why he plays this running back and plays that running back, he's probably not going to give you one. So I really don't know what the thinking is behind their rotation, but they've got to figure it out soon.
There is a limited amount of snaps, and they have three running backs that are vying for those snaps, and one has been the main guy, and they just invested a lot of money into keep the main guy and Mark Ingram. So that's the problem here. That's why it's going to be tough to keep everyone satisfied.
But it wasn't the way it used to be with Peyton. The guy who was playing the best got the touches, got the catches, got on the field. Didn't matter what you were making. Recent times, it maybe seems a little bit different. To Ed in Kenner. Ed, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Ed.
Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, Ed.
Hey, the question I have is, when defensive coordinators come to a team, do they bring their own people, or does the coach that's running the team, do they, like, in other words, like ours right now, Dennis Allen and Vitt and Johnson? Is that the way it usually works, or does the defensive coordinator bring his own people in? I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you. In other NFL franchises, normally the defensive coordinator brings in his assistants. This is the only instance where I can see, for the most part, where again you've got two guys that are going to be here no matter what. In the past, we've seen maybe the defensive backs coach has been a guy that Greg Williams has brought in. I think Spagnuolo had brought the same. He had a defensive back coach he could bring in, but it's been Johnson and Vitt for life.
I really don't know what every team does. I think that a lot of teams do give more leeway, but not only did Rob not choose his staff at all, I don't think he brought anyone in. I don't get the sense that he gets that much say in personnel either. I think he does get a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not his decision. So it's hard to gauge how much he actually gets to decide whenever they're bringing a free agent in or drafting a guy.
Right. Evan, you've been in other cities.
Yeah, I think it's a mix. I think sometimes the coordinators get a lot of input, and other times they get less. This time, like Katherine said, that he got none. And obviously, the weird situation during this offseason when his job was basically hanging by a thread, so he had very little leverage. Yes. And when Sean Payton said, hey, here's this new guy coming in to be the senior defensive assistant, he wasn't really in a position to object at that point.
I'm really surprised he stuck around because, again, remember when he came here, he said he could have another job in 5 minutes. I almost feel like, you know what, if that was happening to me, I probably would have moved on.
And if he wasn't under contract, or if this was a situation where he could have gotten out, maybe he would have.
Maybe he would have. Pete is in Metairie. Pete, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Pete.
Hey, guys. First-time watcher. I'm a Patriots fan.
Thank you for watching. Your question or comment?
What's that?
Your question or comment, sir?
Well, I've got a comment, and I'll hang up, and I just want your take on this trade with the Patriots.
Okay, thank you. Again, right now, I'm kind of boggled by it. I don't understand how you bring in a third-string tight end from a club that, again, has a deep tight end position for a starting defensive lineman.
Well, not only that, when the Patriots send a guy away, it's for a reason. So I don't really know what they think they're going to get out of him. Maybe it'll work out, but usually you're not getting Patriots cast-offs and having them go on to be great. So that's one thing to consider also.
That's a great point.
And it's worth remembering that both these players are unrestricted free agents at the end of the season, both the tight end and Akeem Hicks. So, this is a 13-game trade, basically. For whatever reason, the Saints thought Akeem Hicks did not offer that much value over the next 13 games, and
they're ready to move
the
on.
new tight end does.
Yeah. Saints versus Dallas on Sunday. Katherine?
Are you asking me to make a pick?
Oh, yes, I'm asking you to make a prediction here.
All right, well, I'm going on NOLA.com tomorrow and making that pick anyway. So I'm picking the Saints 24-20.
Oddly, I picked the Saints last week when I really didn't want to, and now I'm picking the Cowboys this week when I really am not sure that's the right one either. But 27-24 Cowboys.
Well, all the Saints fans that will be in the Dome on Sunday and across the Gulf side are hoping you're wrong. Katherine Terrell of NOLA.com, Evan Woodbery of NOLA.com, thank you so much for being on our panel tonight. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. Also, in the New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette markets now at 9 p.m. on Pelican Sports Television. You can catch me on the radio, 990 a.m. WGSO, 11 a.m. until 1 weekdays. Of course, you can listen on the TuneIn Radio app and also at ericasher.com, where you can catch every single episode of Inside New Orleans Sports. Don't forget, every Monday night, Legacy Kitchen in the Warehouse District, 700 Chapatulas at Girard. Come join us for the Monday Night Football Party, 7 to 8 on WGSO Radio. And, of course, my co-host is Saints Hall of Famer Tyrone Hughes. So make sure you check us out on Monday nights as well. Again, special thanks to our guests, Katherine Terrell and Evan Woodbery. Also to the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, Philip Williamson, and also my director, William Hill. My name is Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll catch you next Thursday night right here on WLAE.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.